A few years ago, I found myself stuck in a cycle that I didn't recognize at first. I was constantly checking for my phone, checking social media, scrolling through endless feeds, and watching videos late into the night. It felt normal, even necessary, like it was a part of modern life. But as time went on, I started to notice something unsettling. I wasn't feeling any better. In fact, I felt worse, more anxious, more restless, and less satisfied with life. It took me a while to realize what I was experiencing was more than just a bad habit. I was caught in the trap of cheap dopamine, the quick hits of pleasure that would come from easy, accessible sources like social media, junk food, and mindless entertainment. These instant gratifications were giving me temporary pleasure, but they were also preventing me from pursuing deeper, more meaningful goals. I was stuck in a hedonic treadmill, always chasing the next dopamine hit, but never truly feeling fulfilled. Breaking free from this cycle wasn't easy, but it was one of the most important things I've ever done. By understanding the impact of cheap dopamine on my life and learning how to replace it with more rewarding pursuits, I was able to transform my habits, my mindset, and overall sense of well being. I want to share my journey with you, how I recognized the problem, and the steps I took to change, and the profound impact it's had on my life. Recognizing the trap of cheap dopamine. For a long time, I didn't realize there was a problem. Like many people, I was living in a world where instant gratification was the norm. I'd start my day by checking my phone, scrolling through social media, and catching up on the latest news. Throughout the day, I'd take frequent breaks to watch YouTube, browse memes, or play a quick game. In the evenings, I'd wind with some Netflix or probably lose myself in another video game. At first, these activities felt harmless, even enjoyable. They proved a quick escape from the stresses of life and a way to relax and have a little bit of fun. But over time, I started to notice these quick fixes weren't really making me happy. In fact, they were making me feel empty. The more I indulged in these activities, the less I felt satisfied with my life. I began to see that I was using these quick dopamine hits as a way to avoid discomfort, boredom, stress, and even deeper feelings of dissatisfaction. Instead of addressing the underlying issues in my life, I was numbing myself with easy pleasures. And while these pleasures provided temporary relief, they're also robbing me of the motivation to pursue more meaningful and fulfilling activities. How cheap dopamine was holding me back. As I reflected on my habits, I realized that the constant pursuit of cheap dopamine was having a significant impact on my life. It wasn't just that I was wasting time, though that was certainly a part of it. The real issue was that these habits were preventing me from becoming the person I wanted to be. I noticed that my ability to focus had diminished. I started to work on a project, but within minutes, I'd feel the urge to check my phone or take a break or watch something. My attention span had shrunk, and I found it difficult to concentrate on anything for an extended period. This lack of focus was affecting my productivity and making it harder to achieve my goals. I also realized that my relationships were suffering. Instead of being fully present with the people I cared about, I was often distracted by my phone or thinking about the next thing I wanted to do online. I wasn't engaging in deep, meaningful conversations, and I wasn't investing my relationship in the way I knew I should. But perhaps the most troubling realization was that I was losing touch with my own passions and values. The things that used to excite me, like reading and writing and exploring new ideas, were taking a backseat to constant barrage of digital distractions. I was spending more time consuming content than creating it, more time reacting to the world than actively shaping my own. Deciding to make a change. I knew I couldn't go on like this. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I needed to make a change. Not just for the sake of my productivity, but for the overall well-being. I wanted to live a life that was rich with purpose and meaning, not one that was just driven by the pursuit of fleeting pleasures. The first step was acknowledging that I was addicted to cheap dopamine. It wasn't easy to admit, but once I did, it became clear that I needed to make concrete steps to break the cycle. I started by educating myself about the science of dopamine and how it affects the brain. I learned that dopamine isn't just the pleasure chemical we often hear about, it's also the molecule that drives motivation and reward. When we get too much dopamine from easy sources, our brain's reward system becomes desensitized, making it harder to find pleasure in more challenging but ultimately more rewarding activities. Armed with this knowledge, I made a commitment to change my habits. I didn't expect it to be easy, but I was determined to take control of my life and refocus on what mattered to me, reducing the noise and finding clarity. The first step in my journey was to undergo what I now think of as a dopamine detox. I knew I needed to create some distance between myself and the constant stream of digital distractions that had taken over my life. I started by setting some clear boundaries around my technology use. For a while, I deleted social media apps from my phone and installed website blockers on my computer to limit access to time-wasting sites. I also set specific times during the day when I allowed myself to check email or browse the internet, and I made sure to keep these sessions short and focused. At first, detox was challenging. I was so used to reaching for my phone whenever I had a spare moment that I found myself feeling restless, even anxious without it. But as the days went on, something interesting started to happen. I began to feel more at peace. Without the constant barrage of notifications and distractions, I found that my mind was clearer, my stress levels were lower, and I was able to focus on the things that truly mattered to me, replacing the cheap dopamine with meaningful pursuits. Once I had created some space in my life, the next step was to fill that space with activities that were genuinely fulfilling. I knew that if I wanted to break the cycle of cheap dopamine for good, I needed to find new sources of motivation and reward, ones that aligned with my values and long term goals. I started by reconnecting with the things that used to bring me joy and satisfaction. I picked up old habits that I had neglected, like reading, writing, and actually playing music. These activities required more effort and focus than scrolling through social media, but they also provided a deeper sense of accomplishment and fulfillment. I also made a conscious effort to spend more time in nature and engage in physical activities. I began taking daily walks, practicing mindfulness, and exploring new hiking trails. These activities helped me reconnect with the world around me and provided a natural source of dopamine that was far more satisfying than anything I could get from a screen. Another important change was focusing on building deeper relationships with the people in my life. I made an effort to be more present during conversations, to listen more actively, and to engage in meaningful discussions. I also prioritized spending quality time with loved ones, whether it was through shared activities or simply enjoying each other's company. Finding fulfillment and purpose. As I continued to replace cheap dopamine with more meaningful pursuits, I began to notice my profound changes in life. My focus and productivity improved dramatically. I was able to concentrate for longer periods, and I found that I was making real progress on my goals. The sense of accomplishment that came from this was far more rewarding than any quick dopamine hit I had previously sought. My relationships also improved. By being more present and engaged, I was able to connect with the people around me on a deeper level. I felt more connected, more supported, and more fulfilled in my interactions with others. But perhaps the most important change was the way I felt about myself and my life. I no longer felt like I was drifting through my days, chasing fleeting pleasures that left me empty. Instead, I felt a new, renewed sense of purpose and direction. I was living in alignment with my values, pursuing my goals that truly mattered to me, and finding my joy in the process. Breaking free from the trap of cheap dopamine allowed me to reclaim my time, my energy, and my life. It wasn't always easy, and there were times where I was tempted to fall back into the old habits, but the rewards of living a more intentional, purpose-driven life far outweighed any challenges I faced along the way. Staying committed to what matters. While I've made significant progress, I know that my journey isn't over. The allure of cheap dopamine is always there, and it's easy to slip back into old patterns if I'm not careful. But I'm committed to staying true to this path, to prioritizing meaningful pursuits over instant gratification, and to continue to grow and evolve as a person. One of the most important lessons I've learned is that real fulfillment doesn't come from external sources, it comes from within. It's about living in alignment with your values, pursuing your passions, and finding joy in the journey rather than the destination. It's also about embracing the challenges and discomforts that come with growth, knowing that they're necessary and a part of the process. If you're feeling stuck in a cycle of cheap dopamine, I encourage you to take a step back and reflect on what really matters to you. What are the things that bring you true fulfillment? What are the goals and the values that drive you? And how can you start to align your daily habits with those deeper motivations? Breaking free from the trap of cheap dopamine isn't easy, but it's one of the most important things you can do for your well-being and your future. It's also reclaiming your time, your energy, and your life, and choosing to invest in the things that truly matter. And while the journey may be challenging, the rewards are more than worth it. Choosing fulfillment over instant gratification. Looking back on my journey, I'm grateful for the challenges I faced and the lessons I learned along the way. They taught me the importance of living with intention, of choosing fulfillment over instant gratification, and prioritizing what matters to me in life. I'm not perfect, and I still have moments when I'm tempted to buy the easy pleasures of cheap dopamine. But I've learned to recognize those temptations for what they are, and I've built habits and mindsets needed to stay focused on my long-term goals. If you're feeling overwhelmed by the demands of modern life and the constant pull of digital distractions, I want you to know that you're not alone. But I also want you to know that you have the power to break free from that cycle and create a life that's rich with purpose and meaning. It starts with a decision to prioritize what truly matters and to take small, intentional steps towards a more fulfilling life. It won't be easy, but I promise you, it'll be worth it.